And there we are. Good morning, everyone, and happy World Card Making Day. It's a celebration in our industry, and I could not think of a better thing to do. I mean, not that we don't usually make cards here on our Saturday morning Zoom, but I've had a lot of requests for different ways and different ideas for mass producing cards and how to do it quickly, because the Christmas season is upon us. I know many of you card makers like to get started here in October to get your Christmas cards ready, whether you are snail mailing them, whether you are donating them to seniors' homes, whether you just like to make Christmas cards because you have so much Christmas paper. This is a great template that I'm going to show you that is super easy, super flexible, and still allows a lot of room for flexibility and creativity, which, for me is one of the most important things. So for today, you do need 3 sheets of pattern paper. Preferably 2 of them have random enough patterns that direction doesn't matter. That way we can do both landscape and portrait cards. I did a practice run yesterday, and I used the Farmhouse Christmas line from Echo Park, and they've got all these great little tags and things, but I chose 3 patterns, and you will see them all featured here. So the 12 cards I made 3 with red, so the random pattern helps, like I said, so that you can do both landscape and portrait cards. But here is using the red snowflakes on one side. If I remember correctly, the back side of that paper is a green plaid. So here's 3 cards that I made. Here is another 3 cards. So this is just using the reverse side of that pattern paper, and I'll show you how to do that. That's 6 cards. Let me stack them the same direction. I used this black snowflake pattern as well, and created some really cool little cards. And then the back side of that black snowflake was actually a wreath paper. So this is the only one of those 4 sides that did have a direction. So you'll see that all 3 of these ones are portrait cards, because that's really the only difference, that if you are using a pattern paper that has direction, it just means you have to think about it when you cut to make sure that you are doing the direction that you want to do. Beyond this, I also made 4 little 3x3s. So we're actually going to get, that one goes this way. We're actually going to get the 12 standard size cards and the 4, so 16, if I do my math right, yep, 16 cards in total out of this little template that I'm going to give you. And like I said, there's lots of room for creativity and changing things up and making them look different, even though they are using the same basic pieces. I can now go in and cut out some of these tags to embellish on here, or I can use the ephemera pack. That's where the real fun comes into play. But when it comes to mass producing, you can get these base pieces done quickly and then spend the time on the decorating and embellishing, and still not have to spend a ton of time getting them ready. So those are my sample ones. I now have 16 Christmas cards ready to go. Woohoo, woohoo. Gonna get these out of the way. And like I said, today I'm gonna make Halloween cards, because I have nieces and nephews in Ontario and in Nova Scotia that I would like to send some little goodies to. Since trick-or-treating really probably won't be a thing this year. But you use whatever occasion or whatever kind of paper you want to have. If you just have patterns that's okay as well. That way you can stamp and make the sentiments match whatever occasion that you need. And then I also have a piece of white cardstock. We're going to need those for the 3x3 cards when we get to it. And again, if you want to use them for sentiment strips, I have a stash of circles already punched and die cut. This was from when we did a Magic Iris class, and it was the center that we didn't actually use. So I always keep them handy because they've got the nice little stitched pattern on it. It's always good to have those things handy, but if you just have a circle punch that you want to punch a bunch of circles or different shapes or use squares, totally up to you. This is so flexible. It really is easy. So the 3 patterns I have, these are using the Gnome for the Holidays Halloween papers from Photoplay. I've got this super cute one with all of the different potions, and it's got stripes on the back. So this is one of the 2 patterns that I'm going to use that is non-directional, because I can do either portrait or landscape. The other non-directional one I'm going to use is this orange polka dot. And it's got a diagonal stripe on the back, and wow, that's busy on that camera, so I apologize for that. And then the last one that I'm going to use is this cute little bat paper with the spider webs on the back. Now, because these bats are directional, I mean, you could have sideways flying bats if you wanted to, but I don't want to, so I'm going to use this one for cutting squares. That way we can rotate him any way we want. So the first thing you're going to do is pick your 2 pieces that you are going to use for those bases. And we're going to cut them into 4 by 5 1/4 pieces. So in my example, it's where I've used the red or the wreath or the green. So pick 2 of those patterns. Grab your paper trimmer. Obviously, start by cutting off your advertising strip. We do not need that. That advertising strip is usually about 1/2 inch. I tend to cheat and eyeball. Someone's asking, do the pattern papers have to be double-sided? No, they do not. It just means that, so when I did the double-sided, I did 3 of one side and 3 of the other side because I could just flip it over. If you only have single-sided paper, that just means you have 6 of the same pattern instead of 3 and 3. So it does not have to be double-sided. Okay, I'm going to cut off my second advertising strip. There we go. So now we have 2 pieces that are 12 by 12. And they are non-directional, which helps. If you are using a directional and you want to do portrait cards, then when you're cutting your first cut, make sure you turn it 90 degrees this way. If it's my bat paper, for example, if I were using this as base paper and I wanted portrait cards, so tall and skinny, my first cut is going to have him sideways. If you want landscape cards, then keep it the right direction. But that's why I find it easier to use non-directional if you can, because it doesn't really matter and it gives you more flexibility. So I'm going to start by taking one of my pieces of pattern paper. And like I said, if you want to turn it that 90 degrees, I'm going to cut it at 5 1/4 inches. So 5 1/4 all the way. I'm going to slide my paper along and cut it at 5 1/4 again. So you will have 2 pieces that are 5 1/4 by 12 at this point, and you've got a big long strip. For now, that skinny strip can just go off to the side. We may come back to it later if you want it for decorating, but for your base pieces, we don't need it. I'm going to take these 2 strips, and I know my trimmer can take 2 pieces of paper at a time, so I'm going to turn in the horizontal, and I'm going to cut into 4-inch wide pieces. So cut it at 4, slide it along, cut it at 4 again, and you will have 4 left over. So now I have 6 pieces that are 4 by 5 1/4. Alrighty. If I move too fast, ladies, please don't hesitate to ask me to repeat myself. I'm happy to do so. But I'm now going to move on to my second sheet of pattern paper and do the exact same thing. So I'm going to cut it at 5 1/4. Make sure I'm snugged up against the top of my trimmer there, 5 1/4, and cut. Slide to 5 1/4 again, and cut. My little strip is going off to the side. Stack them and turn and cut it at 4 inches. So now I have 6 of these with the orange polka dot as well that are 4 by 5 1/4. That gives me my 12 main bases for my cards. All right, so those can go off to the side. Now you're going to take your third pattern, and I have my bats. I'm going to cut this into 16 3 by 3 squares. So I'll start by taking off my advertising strip. And I'm going to start by cutting 4 strips that are 3 inches wide. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. And now I'm just going to stack 2 at a time. Actually, you know what? I'll just stack 2 at a time, turn it horizontal, and cut them at 3 inches again. So I have 16 3 by 3 squares. And I can see here that if you notice mine really closely, my strips aren't totally even. Not the end of the world. Super forgiving. And nobody's going to be measuring. So just cutting these down to 3 by 3-ish. Do the same with my second set of 2. And there we have it. So now I have 16 3 by 3 squares, and I'm putting my trimmer aside because we are done cutting. So if you are like me, you have 16 of these squares. You have 6 of pattern number 1 and 6 of pattern number 2. So now is the time that we can start playing and laying out our little template. So I'm going to take my squares away just for a second. And I'm going to start with pattern number 1. And I'm just going to lay them out in front of me. And I may run out of space on the camera here, but you get the idea. Let's see, it looks like I can get 4 across. So let's move those, move up. 4, 4, 4. So that means I've got 4 here, and then 4. All right, since we're going off the camera, watch out for earthquakes here. I'm just going to raise the camera up just a smidge so we can see it all. That's better. And I'll move up. So I've got my 12 little card bases, but because my pattern paper is double-sided, I'm going to do this. So I'm going to flip, flip, flip. So now I have 3 orange, 3 diagonal, and then flip, flip, flip. So now you can see I've got 4 different patterns. If your paper is single-sided, then no worries, you'll just have 6 and 6. And what I may do, just because I can, I'm going to take one of each pattern and turn it sideways. So now I have some portrait cards and some landscape cards. And totally up to you whether you want to do more. So maybe we'll do that to start. So I've now got 6 landscape and 6 portrait. Now we're going to deal, just like dealing cards, we're going to take one of each square and put it on each card base. And you will have 4 left over. Those are for our 3x3 cards, which we will do at the end. So I'm just going to tuck those up on my computer here. So you see how it's coming together. And this is now where we can start to kind of play and move things around. So on this one here, I may position my bats so that it's off to the side. This one, I'm going to put my bats at the top. This one, just to be different, I'm going to flip it over and use the spider web side. Here, I'm going to move them to the left, so it's different than this one, but same idea. Let's come down here. I'm going to flip over to spider webs. This guy I'm going to leave in the center. This is getting busy, but I think the black is too dark. And this is where, if you decide that you now want to dig into your scrap bin, you can, or we can use some different products to help make these little squares stand out a little bit more. So don't worry if they're getting a little too blendy in here. We can do things to fix that. So I'm just trying to position, maybe I'll do this one, and nothing is set in stone until you start gluing. And even then, we usually have ways that we can work around it. So this one, maybe I'm going to put on a slight angle. And again, I think that the black on the black might be too dark here, but maybe this one I'll actually line up against the top. Here, I'm going to flip to spider web. Here, I'm going to flip to spider web. And maybe this one I will leave because there's stuff we can do to make him pop a little bit more. So in essence, ladies, this is all you need to know. This is the basic template. It gives you your 12 different cards and gives you all kinds of different variations that you can now use to create your individual cards. I think when I did my Christmas cards, I then also just kind of dealt out circles. I didn't necessarily use them all, but at least this way I knew if I needed to make some more, I could. Let's see if I'm going to have enough here. Oh, I'm one short, but that's okay because we'll figure something out. Now we were talking about these being blending in a little bit. You could either use some scrap cardstock to cut bases or mats for underneath those squares, or we can now use our extra strips. So what I'm going to do, these are, if I remember correctly, yeah, they're 1.5 inches wide. So I'm going to cut them into 2 so that they are 3/4 of an inch wide each. So just stack them, grab my trimmer, which I can do it on top. So I'm going to line it up at my 3/4 of an inch mark. That will cut them basically in half. And I'm going to turn them horizontal. I'm going to put 2 aside for now, but I'm going to start with 2, one of each pattern, and I'm going to cut them into 4-inch strips. So they're now 3/4 by 4. and we have 6. So now what I can do in some of these that start to blend in together is I can create some contrast. So I can put that strip behind it and it gives it some definition. Or I could put the strip, actually this one I might put on top. So maybe I'm going to do something like that. Over here, I may do something like that. I'll bring it closer to the camera here. So you see how now that orange strip is giving some definition to our bats, excuse me, on our black and green stripe. And up here on some of the brighter ones, so I could put the potion kind of going across like that. What's on the other side? This is a stripy piece. So maybe I do something like that. This has that green stripe. So let's do that. And again, nothing set in stone. It's like playing with puzzles because nothing's stuck down. So we can move the pieces around and do all kinds of funky stuff. So this is where you can just have a little bit of playtime and you can start to feel your creative juices starting to flow. Where did I put my card bases? So the next step here, and this is where I just kind of went systematically through and created each card. My templates are done. So just so that I have room, I'm going to move some of my pieces off to the side here. You may not see them for a minute, but I promise to bring them back. How are we for time? We're 20 minutes in. So I think I'm just going to make a few of these cards, but you get the idea that you can play and mix and match. And then I will show you how we do the 3x3 cards. So let's start with, I'm going to take my card base, fold it in half. And let's just start with this guy. He's going to be nice and simple. My card base, or yeah, my pattern base, I'm just going to make sure I get my adhesive the right direction. And because of the size that we have cut these pages, or these rectangles, they will just nest with a small white border around all 4 sides. So when you've got it positioned on your paper, it's going to look something like this. Depending on what you are using, you are welcome to ink. So this one here, I use some vintage photo ink around the outside and on these pieces because I felt like it gave it a little bit of pop. I could easily do that with the orange too. I have my crackling campfire, hooray. So maybe I'll do that on the next one. Or you can even use some of the luster polishes or opal polishes that we've got here. Let me finish this first one and then we can talk about different ways that you can embellish. So I've got my base, I've got my square. I'm going to just give him a nice border up towards the top. And then my circle. Now, I tend to go and put all my sentiments pieces on as I'm planning. But if you're not sure what stamp you're going to use or how you're going to embellish, you may not want to stick these circles down. I've just done that from a planning and also just from a demonstration standpoint. So I'm just going to attach my circle right in the center. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. That one card is done. Did I remember? No, it doesn't look like, oh, I did. Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2, let's do this one. So it's all the same pieces, but here's how we can make it look different. I'm going to take my corner rounder and I'm going to round the top right and the bottom left corners. So now you've got that kind of funky shape. It's not showing up because it's so busy. Let me put it on here. So when I stick it down, it's got a rounded corner here and a rounded corner down here. Excuse me. I'm going to take my crackling campfire and just distress those edges just a little bit. All I'm doing is dragging the ink pad on the edge, but if you prefer to use a sponge, there's so many different ways to do this technique. And I'm going to stick them onto my card. Ta-da! So now it's starting to come together. I've got my bats. I'm going to do the same thing so that rounded corner mirrors itself. Oh. Got something stuck in my corner rounder. There we go. And I'm going to ink this guy as well. My lid back on. So same card, same idea. I'm going to center it towards the top and put my circle on. I could pop up my circles as well. But now you can start to see how you can have a lot of fun with these and have the same pieces, but make them look different. So if two people were looking at these side by side, they might think that those are two different cards. We could then take a third version of the same idea. So this time I've got my green stripe, I've got my spider web, I was going to call it snowflake, but that's not right. And I've got my circle, but I'm going to do a landscape card. So this time, let's take it up a notch. Let's round all four corners. 1, 2, 3, and 4. While I've got it out, I'm going to round my square piece as well. This time we're going landscape. So you know what? Just to be even more fun, I'm going to round my card base too. Now when I do this, I tend to only do the bottom ones. I don't do the one on the fold. That double thickness does tend to create problems with my corner rounder. If you've got an awesome corner rounder that can do the top ones, definitely go for it. But don't forget to do the back side as well, so that when your card is closed, all of those corners match up. This time, I'm just gonna, let's see if we can do this without it being too messy. So this is luster polish that I'm gonna use exactly in the same way that I used the ink. This should be a little bit damp. Good thing I've got the sink right behind me here. So I'm just going to scoop a very little bit of this product out onto the sponge. And it does have it's orange, but it's got a little bit of sparkle to it as well. Make sure my hands are dry. And I'm just going to go on the edges like so. Back in there. Oh, let's do the black. All right, put my lid back on. And because this is still a teeny bit wet, I'm going to put my tape on here, just eyeball it. Can you see what I'm doing? So there, it's just centered on my card base. Put my square on. So the other ones we did slightly centered and towards the top. This one I'm going to do slightly centered and towards the right. And then I would put my circle on. Or you know what, this time I'm going to do some, let me do a strip. So I've got some extra cardstock where I'm just going to cut off a strip that I can put a sentiment on. I'm going to dovetail my ends. And so now this could go right here, and I can stick my Happy Halloween sentiment on there down the road. So really, these 3 cards that we've done off the top are using the same kind of format, but they look vastly different. And you can do that and continue across all 12 of your cards just by moving things around, adding little scraps and strips here. I mean, other than the white, we haven't really dug into any extra paper other than those 3 sheets of pattern paper that we started out with. So in the interest of time, I am not going to complete my 12, but you can really see how that can be done. You can do fun things where you can put your square on a diagonal so that it's a diamond. I had one where I cut the square in half. You can position it any way you want, but you can really easily and quickly put these 12 cards together. Now, one word of caution: don't get too hung up in the decision-making process. Just go ahead, as long as each one is a little bit different, or you know what, if you just want to get it done super quick, make them all the same. They could all look like this, and just do them all 12 across. Try not to get hung up in the decision-making process, because anything you come up with is going to be awesome. They're simple, they're clean, they're pretty, and whoever receives those cards is just going to be so touched and grateful that you made them something with your own 2 hands. They're not going to be too fussed as to whether their card looks like their neighbors beside them, because honestly, they're probably not even going to see that. Or if it's you could put doilies behind it, but you can just keep it really simple, and the person receiving it will be appreciative. So before I go, let's move on and let me show you how to prep and do your 3x3 cards. Let me just get these out of the way. So you will need a piece of white or neutral cardstock that is 6 inches by 12 inches. I've just got white here, and again, I could have been using that as my scraps as well for my sentiment strips. So as you're prepping, if you wanted to prep those ahead of time too, you can. So I'm going to cut this at 6. I'm going to use my little scoring tool. So at the 3-inch mark, I'm going to score. If you have a scoreboard that you'd rather use as well, go right ahead. The scoring just helps you get a nice crisp fold. But just be careful with scoring. As I've often said, don't push too hard. You're better off going over it a few times and getting your deep crease as opposed to pushing it and pushing right through. So now I've got my score line down the middle. I'm going to turn it horizontal and cut it at 3 inches 3 times. 1, 2, and 3. That gives me my 3x3 card bases. So I can just nicely fold them in half. And the same basic process can apply. So I've got my I've got my bats. So maybe one card is just the bats. And again, so you can do them with a top fold so they stand this way, or you can do them with a side fold so they stand this way. Just make sure if you're doing the side fold, your fold is on the left. Not that there's anything wrong with doing it on the right-hand side. We just call that a left-handed card, and we give that to my husband, who is left-handed. But I kind of like doing the top fold, so this is going to go edge to edge. And I'm going to take my circle. And it's ready for a sentiment. It's ready to go on a little treat bag or with a little gift. And it's good to go. I can further embellish it by, so I'm going to take my bats here, but I am going to cut them in half on the diagonal. So I'm just lining up the corners on my trimmer. Can we see that? And this works best with squares because your triangle is going to be even. So maybe on this card, I've got my bats in the bottom corner. And now my spider webs in the top corner. And if I had any more circles, let me steal a circle from one of these cards. There you go. So you can go ahead and finish your 3x3 cards like so. So really easy template, ladies. If you have a pen and paper, I will quickly go over the measurements again so that if you want to recreate, what I will do, probably not until tonight or tomorrow, I will finish up my cards and I will post them on our Facebook page if you want to see what my finished ones look like. But I'd love to see yours as well. So feel free to post, whether it's on the inner circle, if you're in our VIP group, or if you just post on a regular Facebook page, or you just want to email them to me. I'd love to see what you've come up with. So just to recap, and I don't have a pen, but I have a highlighter up here. So you're going to take 2 pieces of 12 by 12, and you're going to cut them into pieces that are 4 by 5 1/4. And you'll have six pieces in total when you're done from each piece. You're going to take your 3rd piece of pattern paper and you're going to cut them into 3 by 3 squares. And that gives you 16 little pieces. So this times 2 equals 12. And that's really all you need to know. You need your card bases, you need a little bit of extra white, and you could bang out 16 cards in, well, clearly a little bit more than half an hour, and depends on how much bling you add and how much extra doodads you add. But I would say in a good hour, a really quick hour, you could have all 16 of those cards done and ready to put in envelopes and mail. Great way to craft while you're watching TV. You can, it doesn't take, once you've got the pieces cut and once you are playing around, it's super easy to just then assemble and stamp and get ready to go. So thank you so much, ladies. I wish you an awesome World Card Making Day. It's been pretty quiet, so I'm glad that things were clear and that you could hear me. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to message me or email me, and we will go through those kinds of things again.